Hey, gang.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning or evening, depending on where you're watching from, I suppose, right?
Yes.
Afternoon, evening.
Afternoon, evening, yeah. How's everybody doing?
Doing well. Did you get any sleep, Tim? Jeena?
What coffee's for?
Cheers.
So yesterday was a really, really exciting day, huh?
Yeah, what did we do?
So yesterday, for anybody who hasn't seen already, please check out the WebPageTest. We also have a blog post that kind of goes into the details about it, but the team has been working really, really hard on a bunch of new features and functionality. Honestly, for the last, it's been a while, many months of work going into this. And yesterday we got those out. And yeah, there's a lot there. I don't even know where we want to start diving in, but it's awesome. I was very pumped to finally see it out. It was exciting to see everything kind of come together. I guess, there's some things that are some old, things that have kind of, nice additions, more incremental improvements, like bulk testing and private tests. And, we have premium locations now for subscribers so that they have kind of a spot where, maybe the queue links are going to be nice and short for them. They had about 11 to 12 of those, with more of those coming, things like that. But really the two headliners, and I think the thing that we're going to kind of dwell on today, right, are the opportunities in the experiments.
Yeah. Let's start. I guess, maybe Tim, start with why you built this.
Yeah. So there's a few things that went into. So first, at a high level, and we'll get into this more. I think Scott will probably have you drive and kind of show things off a little bit. But
sure.
So opportunities are our own opinionated set of recommendations around how to improve the overall effectiveness and usability of your site. So we break those opportunities down into three categories: quick, resilient, and usable. And you can get, these are kind of like things folks are familiar with a page speed insights, or a why slow before that, or Lighthouse nowadays, right? Our own sort of take on what those recommendations would be, powered by WepPageTest. That alone was pretty darn awesome. We introduced a bunch of things there that I think are brand new, like some insights that I think we've, have been there in the data before, but we've never really drawn the line. One of the big goals here, right, was to make this much more approachable for folks. And so those opportunities have all sorts of new things. One of the things I'm pumped about with the opportunities is the accessibility addition, which is a new thing for us.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. I mean, a few users probably knew that we've been running accessibility audits behind the scenes with a lot of test runs for several months now, but we weren't really surfacing any of that information yet. So along with opportunities, we get a lot of that surfaced right in the UI, and you can see any critical, serious issues that might arise that we detect, which is really, really nice. Kind of broadening the idea of a good web experience from just performance alone to broader usability, right?
Yeah, there's a whole, the accessibility performance connection in particular has always been interesting, because there's a nice little intersection between the two, and there's a good amount of posts. I know Marcy Sutton's written about some of the intersections there. Leonie Watson's given some great talks, and I know we've got some things that we would like to be able to do kind of around there at some point. So this is kind of the first step in that direction.
Yeah.
So the opportunities are, our way of trying to make this a lot more digestible, moving from, just surfacing a bunch of information and then leaving you to figure out what's going on, to making it a little bit more opinionated, a little bit more action oriented, so that you don't necessarily have to know everything. What was that, Scott?
And cross-browser, I should say.
Yes, cross-browser. That was another huge thing, and I'm super pumped about that. WebPageTest runs we can run in Edge, Firefox, Brave, Chrome, Safari, every major browser. And so these opportunities also get pulled out from every major browser. Now, the opportunities you see from one browser to another might change a little bit based on whatever we're able to detect, or, stuff like that. But that will continue to get fleshed out. We're actually working with each of those major browser vendors and stuff. So I would expect each of those to get bolstered as time goes on.
Yeah.
But then And then the real big one, right, is the experiments, the no code experiments. Scott, you want to explain what that is real quick before we demo that one off? Because that one.
Yeah, sure. So Tim mentioned the opportunities, which are the result of diagnostics that we run. Each diagnostic test either results in a pat on the back that things look pretty good and we don't really have anything to recommend, or an opportunity, which results in either a tip or an experiment from us, depending on what's available and what's best that we could recommend. Sometimes we'll just recommend that you might try something in your own code base. But in the case where we can offer an experiment, that's kind of the killer feature, I think, that that comes with WebPageTest Pro. And those experiments actually apply optimizations to your actual site without changing it. So it's kind of, it's applied in a simulation environment. And we're able to compare your original test result in that same environment to one that has optimizations applied, and see if particular changes to your code actually improve certain metrics or make certain bottlenecks go away. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. That's both useful to know, right?
For sure. Well, Jeena, you and I were just talking yesterday about just one of the, even that with like even just being able to figure something out, just the time that it takes, right?
Oh, the speed. Yeah, I often say these and then I'm like, I wish I could like remember that sentence. But yes, I mean, it's not, I think the question was then like, so, the web is going to get fast for everybody. And we were like, yeah, I guess, I mean, it's inevitable when you give good set of recommendations and an opportunity for people to try out things before they can even like ship anything. It's always great. But it's the speed at which you would be able to find these and the velocity at which you'd be able to run experiments. That won't take months. That's not going to take weeks. Those are going to be right at your fingertips. As soon as you run an experiment, you will know what kind of an impact it has on those three pillars that we're looking at, which is how quick it is, how usable the site is, and how resilient they are. So it's the speed at which you would be able to like do what you do really well. But at the same time, then you move on to like doing other things, like other parts of the sites that you want to fix, or the overall user experience that you really want to like improve. And so that it's that bit that actually like gets reduced from weeks, months. And I mean, I'm no expert on this. This is all you, Tim and Scott, and everybody else in the developer community and web performance community who've been developing sites and improving sites for a very long time. You know how long it takes. And
yeah, I think
you've got stories. Like it's always been great to like hear all the stories that you've had. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, early on, you asked Tim sort of what was the inspiration that led to this, and I think a lot of our WebPageTest users have been running experiments like this manually for many years now, a decade, and I know I have as a consultant in the past, and just basic experiments, making sure that you run them in a way that you can get a reliable comparison between the site as it exists and with an optimization applied takes a great deal of work. It also risks your code base if you're doing that with a live site. So being able to run it in an environment where it's not actually impacting anything in a code base that people are using. Those are some key advantages, some big time savers.
Yeah, well, and I know, Scott, I'm sure you've run into this too, but I know one of the things, like when I was doing performance consulting and you'd come into a company and you'd ask, one of the questions I'd always ask up front is like, why were they, looking at performance now and what have they tried in the past? And the what have they tried in the past, one of the most common answers was that they had tried to do stuff. Like most teams are trying to figure out performance, and performance feels a little bit like whack-a-mole though sometimes, right? Like you feel like you're squashing something only for other issues to pop up. And so one of the things that I'd hear a lot was from teams that, said that they took, recommendations, or they saw something, a blog post about somebody else's case study, and then they'd go away and work for weeks, maybe even months in a few cases, on trying to make these improvements, only to find out that like they didn't move the needle at all.
Mm-hmm.
There was little or no impact. So getting back to your point, Scott, like even if you run the experiment now and you see that nothing happens. Like Jeena pointed out, the time that it takes to do that is minutes now versus weeks or months. And you can kind of have a much smarter, a much more tactical approach to prioritizing the optimizations, which is huge.
Yeah, it also lets you test more things. I mean, I think maybe an initial reaction at seeing a tool that automates the work that you do day to day is, oh, wow, I don't need to do this work anymore. But really, it gives you more time to do a lot more experiments with different things that you just wouldn't have had the time to do on a client budget in the past. I can show in the demo too that there are a lot of features that are aimed at auditors in particular and performance consultants that I think are really a power tool that will make that whole process a lot richer.
Yeah. Well, and Jeena, you and I sat in on so many conversations with people ahead of time where we were biting our tongues, right? Because everybody kept bringing up the need for this thing. So I guess it's not too surprising that it was fun to see the reaction. So thank you for the community, because there's a whole bunch of suggestions, and we've seen people get really excited and point out either additional features they'd like there, or issues they're coming across, odd cases like that. It's been awesome. So keep those coming.
Yeah.
And it's only been less than 24 hours. So
has it?
And great. I mean, because all of this, at the end of the day, it's, for our community, built by members of our community, right? And at the same time, all your feedback, all the suggestions, feature requests, they're all being looked at, they're all being prioritized. So we have a good team of our developer experience engineering team and a whole community supporting us on this. So thank you so much for being here with us on this journey and continuing on. And we're really adamant to make the web really fast, usable, and resilient. So we're not stopping.
Yeah, I guess right before we jump into the demo, just one last thing on that. The community is a huge, huge part of this. The feedback that we get from the community drives what we do, and that's what helps find, prioritize all of these things. That's where we get a lot of the feedback on the things that we're going to add to the product, or we should be looking at adding and fixing up. That is massive. We're so lucky to have a really engaged and vocal community. And the other thing I want to call out too before the demo is just again, this has been months of work, and it was just some of the folks that were working on this, some of the folks you don't know that were working on this, but there is an incredibly talented team at WebPageTest. This is probably my favorite team that I've ever worked with in my career. And it's just so many smart, talented folks that worked really, really hard to get to this point. So kudos to everyone, because it was so cool to see it all come together.
Yeah, a lot of moving pieces went into
yes, it did.
Getting this launched. And, we're still moving a couple of those pieces on launch day. So if you notice anything like Tim mentioned, drop it in the tracker. We see things on Twitter, but we will see it a lot faster if it comes in the issue tracker.
For sure. Yeah. And stay tuned, because we'll be fixing those things up, but we also have a nice laundry list of things that we know we want to add and improve on already on those things. So opportunities and experiments that you see today, not going to be exactly, there's going to be, a lot of improvements over the next coming weeks and months and stuff like that are going to continue to, bolster that. So,
yeah, I think, you can think of the opportunities page as something that might be different every time you open the same test result, because we will be changing and improving and evolving our recommendations based on browser features that land, maybe, things we aren't able to recommend yet, but we will in, a month or so once they become stable in, browsers of today. So keep an eye on it. We'll keep working on that section.
It's actually another really good point too, is I think and maybe Scott, I don't know if you wanted to walk through the demo and kind of explain that part of it, but I know that one of the things that we've tried to do with the opportunities in particular, as well as in that sense that we don't want this to be a set target that is stable, that people are great, I've checked all the boxes and I'm done with this. I think the fact that it can be run in multiple browsers, multiple countries and cities across the world, different connection speeds, you're going to get different scores every time you do it on each of those different ones. Combined with the fact that with opportunities in particular, we've taken an approach of specifically not giving you a grade instead of those helpful things. And you can show that, I guess, better to show than tell, but we're doing everything we can we want this to be a moving target that is constantly nudging folks to find interesting ways or new ways that they can improve the usability of the site, because that's our job. Like that's the, so.
Yeah. Is my screen showing?
Let's get you demoing, my friend.
All right. Yeah. Can you see the homepage here?
Yes.
Great. All right. Yeah. So I'll walk through some of the new features. If you go to webpagetest.org, this is where you can find everything today. The homepage, if you're familiar with WebPageTest already, is largely the same as it was a week ago, except for this little promo up top that kind of explains the features that you'll get that landed this week. Beyond that, running a test is going to be similar to the experience that it has been all along. You can enter a URL here, choose from an array of browsers and devices and locations around the world, and of course, advanced configurations for setting your own connection speeds, choosing from all of these locations. Tim mentioned as well that along with Pro plans, you get access to even more new premium locations. But you also get moved to the front of the queue on the regular locations. So a lot of advantages there to the features that landed this week. But a lot of what we've surfaced happens when you reach a test result. So I won't make you wait with 8 minutes to go here, but if I were to run a test, I ran one this morning actually, and it was on this site that I want to introduce real quick called The Metric Times. This is a fake news site that we built that is full of terrible performance practices. Lots of blocking resources. We're client-side rendering things with lots of heavy JavaScript that causes the UI to freeze while it's evaluating. Images that are requested in such a way that they don't show nearly as soon as they should. So the purpose of this page is sort of twofold. For one thing, it fails every diagnostic that we run in our opportunities suite of tests, which is useful to us. We can make sure that those are working properly and recommending the right experiments or tips. But also, it's a bit of a playground and sandbox for anyone with a WebPageTest account, free account too, to run opportunities and experiments too. You can use this as a sort of a sandbox to try out all of the experiments. They're all enabled for free with a WebPageTest free account on this particular page. So to get to experiments, first you would land, when you run a WebPageTest test, you would land on this test result, which looks largely the same as it did before. Still, if you're familiar with it, we've got the summary of metrics, a little view of the timeline of how the page loaded. This page in particular, once again, run this test on a 3G connection, 3G fast. On a mobile device from Singapore, few conditions that would make it a little slower than, say, a desktop test on Chrome Wi-Fi speeds. But one thing that's new on the performance summary page when you land on a test result is this block here. And it's a little summary of teasing forward some information from this new section called Opportunities and Experiments. And right away, you can see those tiers that Tim mentioned earlier: quickness, usability, and resilience. So in this case, we've got very contextual feedback that the site was slow to connect and deliver initial code. It began rendering content with considerable delay, and largest contentful paint time was slower than ideal. These paragraphs will change for most sites that you run through the tool. So this is all generated live, sort of could be considered like your own personal performance consultant. But from here, after you get that little summary, you can go through to the Opportunities and Experiments page. And you can get there that way. It's also in this menu. And this is a brand new page. And it's freely available to everyone, regardless of your account level. Even free accounts can look at this page and get opportunities. Even if you don't have an account, you can get these opportunities as well. And they're broken down into those categories. So first, we're looking at quickness here. And you can see right away that we've got some opportunities. So I'll just talk about one here. The tool noticed that we have 6 JavaScript files that are referenced in such a way that they block the page from visibly rendering as soon as it could. So it lists those out here. And then below that, we have some experiments that are recommended that we could try to run and actually apply optimizations to our page and see if it changes this result and gets our page to render visibly sooner. All of these experiments are additive, and you can sort of add them to your cart over here. And down at the bottom, you can see what's applied whenever you hit go. And these are little links to your experiments throughout the page. They'll scroll to the spot. And while it's useful sometimes to apply more than one experiment to a particular test run, sometimes it's better to run them in isolation too. So we kind of give you that option. You can add as many or as few as you'd like and hit go. And you can also choose the particular assets that the experiment will apply to. So this is really useful. We kind of give the power back to you who knows best about your site to say, okay, I'd like to run, I'd like to defer scripts in this experiment, but I know I can't defer these 2 scripts because the page needs them to be there before it renders or else something breaks, right? So you know best in this case. But for the sake of this demo, I can just run all of them. So we're going to apply this experiment, which, as it says right here, we'll find all those scripts in the page and add a defer attribute, which allows them to load in parallel while the page is visibly shown to the user sooner. So from here, I would hit go, and that will kick off an experiment on the metric times in this case. And since we're short on time, I'll just show you a test result that I ran earlier. But this is what it looks like as it's running. You can see the experiment that's running. And really important to point out here, we're running 2 experiment runs. So one is applying the optimizations, and one is a control run, which goes through our experiment proxy sandbox environment, so to speak, but doesn't apply any optimizations. And the reason we do that is we want to have a fair comparison between the optimizations on the page and our original site that's also kind of run through that same environment, which happens to make little improvements just by passing through. So we want to be fair. So once that experiment runs, you land on a page like this, which gives you some comparison between your experiment run. You can see this video up top, which is quite lengthy. It's getting up into the 30 seconds. You can see it took a lot longer on the control run because of the experiment that was run. So head to head here in the video, and then further down you can see metric differences that were changed as a result of this experiment. So you can see what was run here once again, and then various metrics that had changes between the control and the experiment. So in this case, largest contentful paint was over 2 seconds faster, while some of these are probably insignificant, and we mention them anyway, but you need to be the judge about whether that is particularly significant change or not from the experiment. 5 seconds faster speed index, first contentful paint 4 seconds faster. So this was, I think, a successful experiment to run. As you scroll down, you can see the timeline that shows just how much that impacted page loading. It was allowing the page to just show a lot sooner, 4.5 seconds sooner in this case. So that's a good one. Of course, you can run these on real live sites, not just the metric times. So if you have a a WebPageTest account, we allow you to run the first recommended experiment if it happens to be recommended to you, which is defer JavaScript. And beyond that, if you have a pro account, you can run all of the experiments on websites in the wild. So one of those websites in the wild I was going to demo is Google Flights. And I'm doing this one just because it has this big hero image here, which I have seen in test results takes a little while to show up on slower connection speeds. So again, this is a 3G run, 3G connection speed from Mumbai, and our largest contentful paint time is 5 seconds. So you can see that image coming in right around 5 seconds on this timeline. So I'm going to go to the opportunities section and see what it recommends. As we mentioned earlier, you'll see different recommendations and a pat on the back, so to speak, if certain metrics are looking good. In this case, Google Flights had no blocking JavaScript files like the metric times did, but it did notice that largest contentful paint is high, over 2.5 seconds. So it tells you which image that is and offers a couple experiments. And in this case, we have 2 recommended. One is to preload that image, which basically puts the experiment would put a link in the head of the page that sets it to preload the SVG for that LCP image. And that would kick it off immediately at a high priority. It also recommends, and I'm not signed in here, I just noticed for Pro. So that's how it'll look if you have a free account. These will be a little link to go look at the plans for the Pro section. The second experiment that it recommends is the priority hint experiment, which is pretty neat because that's a feature that just landed in Chromium browsers. And what it does is allow you to add a fetch priority attribute to different kinds of external references in your page, like link tags, script tags, image tags. In this case, we're dealing with an image tag. So this experiment would add a fetch priority of high to that image. And I ran this earlier when I was logged in. So you can see the impact of it. So again, I ran an experiment, add priority hint for that SVG image. And here's our result, which is over a second faster to show that LCP image. You can see, maybe I can pause it right when it comes in. Yep. So we can see our experiment here has an LCP, and this one, the control run, doesn't have it yet. So that's successful. In this case, significant, right? Over a second sooner. So that's pretty exciting. And you can see it down here as well. If you want to run additional experiments, you can just click experiment more. That'll take you back to the opportunities page where you can pick and choose different ones. And if I have a moment, I did want to just mention the end of that experiments page as well. Do we have a minute still, Jeena?
I think
Fire away, man.
Cool. All right. So we mentioned the 3 tiers: quickness, usability, resilience, and how we're surfacing opportunities and recommended experiments in those sections. And again, these are really quite cool. A lot of these would take so much time in the past to do by hand. So just being able to self-host a CSS file or some fonts to see if maybe that will improve time that was spent connecting to another domain, redirects that it calls out, maybe see how your page would compare if you didn't redirect on the first request. There are opportunities about how much of the initial HTML was generated by JavaScript in the browser, which can cause a number of issues like delaying the time at which you can use the page. There are opportunities for layout shifts and ways to fix those with experiments. So lots of things here. But if you scroll down past all of these, and again, accessibility we mentioned earlier, that's in here as well. So you can see all of the feedback about accessibility. You get past those, and at the bottom, there's this power user section that's collapsed by default called Create Experiments. And this is where we kind of switch from being reactive and recommending experiments based on bottlenecks that we observe in your test result to actually just offering up the experiments in a free-form way for you to run them on your own site. So this is a section that I think web developers and performance auditors will find really useful, because it's many of the optimizations that you would currently want to do just made a lot easier and reliably compared between control and experiment. Some of these that we offer, adding arbitrary HTML to your page in various sections. So the start of the head tag, the end of the head tag, the end of the body. One example we use often for this experiment would be, say you're on a marketing team and you know that you want to add a live chat widget to the site, or a reviews section or something like that that's driven by an external script. But before you do, you want to know the impact on your performance by adding that script to the page. Is it going to slow things down for all users? Well, you can test that. You could say, okay, I want to test how my page would perform if I added this script to the end of the head in this case. And I'm not going to type it all out here, but you would do that, and it would apply that experiment by adding whatever arbitrary HTML you want right to the end of the head. Further down, we have others like find and replace text, which runs right against the HTML in the page. Really powerful tool there. And then lots of others like that are offered up top, but in a free-form way. So if I wanted to defer some particular JavaScript tags that we didn't recommend deferring for whatever reason up top, you know best, you could add them here, and it will find this one or as many as you'd like, and add defer attributes to those, so you can see how it impacts your page performance. And then lastly, at the bottom here in the cart, so to speak, you can choose the number of test runs. And this is pretty important if you're trying to be economical with the number of runs you have left in your pro account, because every experiment runs a experiment run and a control run. So they're going to count as 2 test runs each. And if you have first and repeat views, those run as well in each environment. So this allows you a little more control over the number of runs that you'd like to do, and you can see the total that will actually be applied. So I think that's pretty much it that I wanted to cover. Did I forget anything, Tim, Jeena?
No, I think, yeah. We have another session. I don't know, we a session later today, and there'll be one that's more Asia Pacific as well as Europe friendly next week, where I believe Tim, you, and Scott, and then we have a member on our India team who'll also join us for the APAC session, take everybody through a more detailed audit of a site. So back to WebPageTest Live. So there's one today, and I think we're just gonna post the details on it. So you will have plenty of time and opportunity to dig into some specific good experiments on some really nice live sites.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah, and it's going to be fun too to see, I think, how everybody else is kind of, as they start diving into experiments and stuff, sharing results. And please do, first off, it's kind of fun to, if you show off something that you found that's kind of huge. But secondly, like, everybody learns from that kind of stuff, which is great. Like, so whenever, you find something that works or doesn't work, fire it out there, share it with folks and stuff like that. I know we'll be watching and learning from that, but I know that's also that's how the community learns. And that's one of the wonderful things about the performance community, I think, specifically, is just historically, this is a community that just shares the knowledge and back and forth across everybody. And it's always been so fun to watch that. So we're excited to see what comes out of this.
Any parting words, anything that you want to share back with everybody who's dialed in and anyone who's going to watch the recording as well?
Boy, I mean, like I said, stay tuned. There's going to be a lot of stuff, improvements coming, a lot of things that we're tidying up and stuff like that. Keep them coming on the GitHub issues. That's where we prioritize the work, and we will be absolutely, there's already a few things that we've got in progress that we'll be knocking off today. So yeah, thanks everyone for that. That's about it for me, I think there.
Yeah. Follow us on Twitter, follow us on YouTube, Twitter for sure, because we post a lot of really good, kind of insights or events that we're participating, as well as, sponsoring, but also just participating in our live Twitch events, like live Twitch and live on YouTube. So it's a lot of really good real-time information gets posted there. So definitely follow us there, and you'll, and we, it's no longer for Twitter for us is not just where we post things. It's also like really good place for the community to ask questions and get it solved. So it's amazing to see the engagement that we see on our Twitter channel. So
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, thanks so much for listening. And once again, if you run into any issues or just have ideas for the tool, it's launch week. We're working through some little glitches here and there. We'll get things sharpened up. So be patient with us. We hope you love it.